We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. By the time you hear this, it's Saturday. We're recording it Friday afternoon. And once again, we have Ed back with us. A couple of weeks we've been missing, and Ed was not on the show. And a lot of people are upset about that, but never fear, he comes back. He is here. Welcome, Ed. It's good to see your smiling face again.
It's good to be here. The reason we get together to talk is usually not very pleasant, but I'm always glad to do it. I enjoy the company. Let's face it, the reason that we do this is because we hate what's going on in this country.
Absolutely. You just did something there, and I get heat for it sometimes too. When you were talking, you closed your eyes. And
Uh-huh.
when I do my report my videos too, sometimes I close my eyes. And
Yeah.
people have to understand we worked in radio.
Yeah.
And I would close my eyes a lot when I would talk because it kind of kept me on track. If I was on a roll on something, I close my eyes and just keep going. And people go, "Why don't you open your eyes?" And I say, "Why don't you fuck off? I'm going to do what
Yeah.
I'm going to do."
Well, this is the same thing. Like when we used to do during pledge drive, when we would do spiels trying to get people to call in and give us money. People told me I did that. I wasn't really aware of it, but when I'm like, you can see what I'm doing here. It's easier to organize your thoughts, and it's easier to keep rolling with it. For some reason, when you close your eyes,
Yeah, and that's what I try to tell people too. I said I never came on here to be some sexy thirst trap. That my face wasn't my strong point.
Yeah.
So I never really think about what I look like. And that was one of the great things about radio. I could come in my pajamas, hungover or sleepy and still
And
sound
frequently
good
did.
because
Yeah.
and no, I frequently did. And still be able to sound halfway decent. Uh,
Hmm.
I always told people, I said, you'd always meet people and they go, "You don't really look like I expected." I go, "No, I sound way sexier than I am."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have to address the elephant in the room. And I hate to
Okay.
start this with an uncomfortable situation,
All
but
right.
I got a lot of people hitting me up about it. They were hitting me up about it prior to Thanksgiving and now after Thanksgiving. You made the prediction that you thought Donald Trump might find his demise at some point before Thanksgiving. And in pure cockroach form, he did not. He is diminishing, but he didn't die before Thanksgiving. How you feeling about that?
I'm not so sure he didn't. I think we're doing a weekend at Bernie's thing here. No, obviously I was a bit premature in my
Yeah.
prediction. Um, Now I'm going for Christmas. I'm just going to the next. Then I'll do New Year's, and hopefully, well, we'll take them as we need them. Let me put it that way. It is impossible not to notice how much he's declined. Um, just a haircut, for example. If you look at his what he had going his first term with the sweep and all of that, that's no longer the case. Now I don't know what he's got in there, but maybe plant implants or something. But and he falls asleep. He falls asleep in a cabinet meeting. Marco Rubio is talking to him, and he's. I
Well, it's
mean,
funny, that people are bugging him about falling asleep, and apparently it's getting really under his skin. I mean, he spent 4 years, 5 years talking about Sleepy Joe. This motherfucker's
yeah.
falling asleep more than Joe ever did, and he'll talk for a few minutes, and then when anybody else is talking, he's out, man. He's
Oh, he's
he's
gone.
completely out.
Well, I think that's true to form for him. Do you really think he's ever listened to anybody about
No.
anything? This is typical of narcissists. They are listening. They're not listening. They're formulating their response, but they're not listening. They couldn't believe that anybody would take issue with something they say. I started watching that the cabinet meeting, right? And it's always the same thing. He babbles for half an hour or something, and then they kiss his ass individually for the next bit of time. Like, was it Pam Bondi who thanked him for, or not Bondi, it was the other one. Maybe it was Bondi
No,
who thanked,
Christy
thanked
Nome.
Christy Dome thanked him for keeping the hurricanes away. I mean, this is some this is some Kim Jong Un kind of crap. I mean, this is full blown please the dictator, fillet the dictator, whatever you want to call it. This is what happens. We're used to it. And but I started counting his lies, and I stopped at 15 in the first 5 minutes. Everything he said was either a lie or an exaggeration.
Well,
You
that and
know,
that's the one thing I've been trying to figure out with him. He tells the same lies. I mean, he kept telling the lie that Walmart's Thanksgiving package is cheaper than it was last year, even though that's been debunked a couple hundred times. He keeps
yeah,
talking about prices going down and his poll numbers going up. I'm trying to decide, is he trying to gaslight or is
yes.
he just so unaware and the people feed him this bullshit and it's what he wants to hear so he just repeats it. I'm not so sure that it's strictly all gaslighting. I think the people around him are gaslighting him and he's just buying it because it's good news to him.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's also the case, but um, he has been quoted as saying, and I think it was Herman Goering who said it too, if you repeat a lie often enough, people start to believe it. And I think he really believes that. Now, of course, there's pushback now, even from his own party on some things, but surely by now people realize when some people do anyway. I'm sure the MAGAs don't, but the idea that we're making money with these tariffs, he keeps saying 18 trillion. Of course, it's way less than that, but still, it's not money coming into the country. It's money that's in the country that's being spent. It's taxing on the American people. That's what the tariffs are, period. So even
Tariffs,
if they even if they did send you a $2,000 check, it's coming out of your hide eventually.
and that's it. It's something that he seems to be very acquainted with. It's not really bringing in money from other countries. He's just laundering our money,
Yeah.
taking our money, calling it something different, and then considering giving us a taste back. But let's be honest. He promised he would bail out the farmers. That didn't happen. He promised China was going to buy a bunch more soybeans. That didn't happen. He's typical of a narcissist. It reminds me of my father. He'd tell us about all these things we were going to do or places we were going to go, and it never happened. Donald Trump is a typical narcissist and he makes grandiose claims and promises, but he always disappoints.
Well, this is true. And he's also, what boggles my mind here is that we don't have rails, we don't have safeguards to deal with somebody who is this narcissistic, this without any sort of integrity. I mean, Pete Buttigieg the other day just pointed out he had the wire transfers and so forth that Qatar, whatever you want to call the place, gave him like $347 million to lift their tariffs. I mean, the
Right.
timing and everything, they've got the wire transfer from Qatar to the Trump organization. This huge amount of money, and the tariff goes away. I mean, this is straight up RICO, racketeering. It's selling influence. It's whatever you want to call it. This guy should be in prison and his whole family with him.
Well, some people have suggested that the whole tariff scam has nothing to do with the economy or
It
punishing
doesn't.
other countries. It's just leverage to get them to cut a deal with one of his companies, one of his sons, or something like that. And this is a perfect example of it. That perfectly shows I'll go in, I'm going to put tariffs on you, give me $350 million, we'll take the tariffs off. With Donald Trump, it's funny. This is typical of narcissists too. They do things and they get away with it, and they always ramp up. And now he's just kind of gone rogue because he doesn't care if it's in the public eye. He'll just explain it away, and some of his dumb fucks will believe it. But he's become very blatant in his criminal and corrupt behavior. He not even fucking care anymore.
No, I mean it's that simple. It's nobody is calling him on it. Nobody is able to exert influence. I mean, we all assume that people in Congress, senators and Congress people in general, uh, if they were able to be elected to that office, they must have some sort of civic duty, civic pride, wanting to do something to make. We find out that's not true. We find out that a goodly portion of them are in it for themselves. They're in it to get as much money as they can and fuck everybody else. And that's what we've got going in the Congress. And each of us has to take a good long look at our representatives from state level on up and say, this person is working for me or this person is working for themselves. And if they're working for themselves, you get rid of them. It can be done. Okay. We just had an election here in Tennessee, and yeah, we didn't win. The asshole won and went, but the challenger managed to come very close in a very gerrymandered district, heavily red, won by Trump by a wide, wide margin in a state that is essentially owned by the Republican Party, and yet came very close. That tells me that the Republicans have a lot to be afraid of in the coming midterms. You mentioned the farmers not being bailed out. There are a couple of states, Nebraska and some others, that are this close to being bankrupt,
Yeah.
to defaulting. I mean, they will be failed states because of what is going on with the tariffs and especially these agricultural states. And then they're also cutting their taxes and so forth. They're run by Republicans, and they've cut off all of their revenue streams. So they won't be able to pay for things like roads and anything. All of their bills will go unpaid because they will have no revenue. They've destroyed it. Missouri, Nebraska, all of these Midwestern states.
Well, that's the important thing to remember. Not only are the farmers dying on the vine, because the farmers are dying on the vine, the state itself doesn't collect money. So now the whole state takes a shit, and everybody, even if you're not a farmer, is going to be affected by this. Now, the opponent in that Tennessee race was Afton Bain.
Yes,
I was actually in a Zoom meeting with Afton Bain, and I got to ask her a couple questions, and she's a very bright young woman.
yes,
Um, there was a lot of hope that she might win. That would be a great victory for everybody. And when she lost, everybody goes, "Oh, see the Republicans win again." The fact that they went from 22% difference, like you say, in a heavy gerrymandered state and district to down to 8.5, 9%, that's quite a jump. And what people don't understand is why this is important and why people are concerned about it, because there are dozens and dozens and dozens of Republicans in their own district that don't have that kind of cushion. They have
yeah,
2%, 5%, 10%, 13%. And those people all see this, fuck, if there's a 13% shift, we're fucked. It's going
yeah.
to hurt them. So this did have a big effect. And what the other thing people have to understand about this too, this guy won that seat, but only for a year.
Yeah,
Because in 2026, they're going to have another election. I believe Afton Bain is going to be running as a Democrat again. And
yeah.
here's what we know for sure: as bad as it is now, it's going to get worse by 2026. So things can change.
Not only that, but I hope and pray that the DNC takes a look at this and says, if we put a little more money into that race, things would have been different. See, this is what they've been doing for years, is conceding states to Republicans just because they show up red on some map that really shows territory and not people. It can be razor edge here, just like it can anywhere else. But people have gotten used to the idea that it's gerrymandered so bad that the Republicans will always win. So nobody puts any money into the races, and sometimes nobody even runs. When I went to the No King's Day protest in Kingsport, Tennessee recently, there was a middle-aged man actually going around and asking practically everybody, "Are you from Sullivan County? If you are, would consider running." Of course, I was not, but he was hitting up pretty much everybody. If trying to get people to run for offices that are never challenged because people assume Republicans will win. Well, We see what can happen when somebody really works at it. I mean, we've had Democratic governors before. We've had Democratic majorities before. It's just a matter of getting the word to people and speaking a language they can understand.
And I think a good example of how bad it can be, when Marjorie Taylor Greene came into the House of Representatives the first time, everybody said, "How the fuck does she get elected?" Well, because she had no opponent. It was a
Exactly.
fucking give me. She stood up and said, "I want to be it. I'm the Republican," and she got in because nobody competed against her. And
Exactly.
that does happen in the very red states. And if nothing else, we've got to put people in those spots to make them work. The Republicans were very pissed about how much money
They had to
uh,
spend.
that Matt Van Epps had to spend because they never had to
Yeah.
do that before. If
Yeah.
nothing else, suck their money dry. It's like being in a negotiation, wanting to buy something or not wanting to buy something, and keep raising it up to the point that there's going to be their end just to suck the money out of them. Same thing with the Republicans. We need to pull the money out of there. Even if you don't win the race, it costs them a lot of money, and that's that's a nice consolation prize.
And this is the thing. We know that's where they have the advantage when, as soon as Citizens United was put in place by the Supreme Court or allowed to be in place by the Supreme Court that doesn't track dark money, that counts money as speech, the minute that happened, we knew that that was the Supreme Court saying, okay, we're going to do this for the Republican Party. Otherwise, they'll never lose, right? That's why
Right.
it was done. It has to be undone. And when we get a good majority, that has to be the first thing that's done. And no centrists, okay? Fuck centrism because it's nothing but being a Republican under the guise of being a Democrat. You've got to go left. And one thing we've got to do is get rid of Citizens United. We have to impeach Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, a couple of others. We've got the goods on them. All we have to do is do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. People say, well, it's never happened with a Supreme Court justice that they've been impeached. It's been close. But the fact of the matter is, none of what we're seeing now we've ever seen before. So it's
No.
reasonable to think desperate times, desperate measures for desperate time. Let's talk about the Supreme Court briefly. The Supreme Court upheld the Texas
Texas.
gerrymandering.
Yeah. Which is that's insane. I mean, I
Yeah.
haven't seen the ruling. I haven't seen, what tortured logic they came up with to justify that. Thank goodness for California. I mean, but this is the thing. We have to, if we have to pack the court, pack it, fuck it, pack it. There's a lot more people than there were when we came up with 9 justices. Okay, we need more Supreme Court justices, and we need the courts to have an effective enforcement mechanism. Because just coming up with a ruling that Pam Bondi's been ignoring, judicial ruling, she's admitted it on tape, you know, and to me, she should be in jail right now.
Well, she might very well be in jail. People think maybe she's untouchable because she's an attorney general, but so was John Mitchell. He ended
Yep.
up in fucking jail. And I think Pam Bondi has some real problems when she's out of power and Donald Trump is no longer in power. If for no other reason, the very clear cover up of these Epstein files,
Yep.
she is guilty of that. Kash Patel is guilty of that.
Hmm.
We may very well see a reckoning, something maybe not like, but similar to the Nuremberg trials, where we're going to have to maybe separate it out. Because we get somebody like Merrick Garland in the DOJ. We don't want to be too political. We may have to have a separate way of prosecuting these people because of the connections into the DOJ and the Supreme Court. So it'll be interesting. Again, it's something would be unprecedented, at least in recent times, but we are in unprecedented times. We have to have these measures to deal with shit we never imagined.
Exactly. It's like Trump's pardons, okay? They're obviously being done for financial gain for him and his family. It's under the table, it's background, whatever it may be, but he's financially gaining something from these pardons, drug lords, and money launderers and people who steal from their own employees. And these are just some of the parts, mega million dollar offenses that these guys did. And now they walk and they don't have to make restitution. That has to be examined. That's insane. It's insane to me that presidents have that power anyway. I
Yeah.
mean, if it's an egregious case like they used to convict black people in the South and so forth, yeah, okay, pardon, use it. You know, you can see the injustice, use it. But in these cases, it's simply a pay for play kind of thing. It's quid pro quo. You know, we have the one example where the guy's mother gave Trump $1 million. He pardons him in a week. You know, it's there. There's no ignoring it. It's happening. That should put him in prison.
I think one of the first things we do have to do when we get control is to straighten out the Supreme Court, because it's one of the branches of our government, and if one of those branches is um, co-opted or tainted, we really don't have a democracy. What people have to understand is all branches of our government currently have been contaminated with
Yeah,
something that's divisive to democracy. So we're in trouble right now. We're not completely in a dictatorship, but we're in a half dictatorship, and people should be screaming about that. We can't keep telling people no one's above the law when the president, Supreme Court justices, and members of Congress are in fact above the law, because that's exactly what's been proven to us over the last 10 years.
exactly. And it boggles my mind that John Roberts, who engineered this on purpose to give the president all the power,
Yeah.
because when the president can dictate to essentially the Supreme Court what, you know, I'm going to do this and don't do anything about it. And then, of course, by doing that, they also limit the power of Congress. Like, for example, these boat strikes he's doing, clearly illegal, clearly outside the pale. And yet, I mean, Congress is the only one who can declare war, but he's got ships and men waiting off the coast of Venezuela right now. He's declared their airspace closed. He's been blowing up these boats and so forth, murdering people on the high seas, and nothing is stopping that. There's no action to try to do that I see. I mean, there's a few people that are trying to do something, but I see no organized effort on the part of the Democrats to get this done. They that's why they gave the power to Congress and not to the president, because it's not a decision for one person.
Yeah, exactly. But I think what Donald Trump has done since he's become part of the political process is he exposed a lot of weaknesses, a lot of
Mhm.
holes in our government. Now you talk about, I've been hearing this my whole life. Only Congress can declare war. And of
Right.
course, Donald Trump is abusing the fuck out of it. But Congress didn't approve Korea.
Mhm.
Congress didn't approve fucking Vietnam. Congress didn't approve Iraq. They didn't approve any of that shit.
Mhm.
So why do we keep saying that if no one ever enforces it? That's the thing about our government.
Mhm.
We've got guidelines. We've got we don't have any laws. We just have this rule of thumb that nobody ever goes across up until somebody steps over them, like Donald Trump. And then there is no protection for the government from somebody walking outside the norms.
Yeah. Could we pause for a minute? I got to run to the bathroom real quick.
Okay.
All right.
And we are back, and I just want to make a point. This show is we don't edit the show, mainly because I don't know how to edit video. Secondly, I just want to be warts and all. uh, Ed decided he had to get up and go to the bathroom, so he went to the bathroom. I want people to note the contrast. Ed is 75 years old.
Six.
He 76 years old. You're three
Yeah.
years younger than Donald Trump. And
Yeah.
you got a notification in your head that said, "Hey, I got to go to the bathroom." So
Yeah.
you got up and went to the bathroom. Had this been Donald Trump, he would say, I got to go to the bathroom. Hold on. And he'd go, "All right, done." because he would have just pissed his pants.
Yeah,
So, so anyway, Ed is more cognitively uh, able by a long shot to Donald Trump, and he's not that much younger than him. But
that's right.
Ed leads a little healthier life, and he's not mentally deranged either.
Well, that we know of, but yeah,
Not in a dangerous way.
no. Donald Trump, he gets in a golf cart and rides around and swings a club once in a while, and that's the exercise he gets. We know that they keep giving him cognitive tests that he keeps acing, but they keep giving them to him, right? And that's not, I've never had one of you. Has your doctor
No,
ever told you that you should probably have a cognitive test?
no. Although I did, they have the cognitive test that he takes, and
Yeah,
I went online and looked at it and kind of took a few pages of it. Not really difficult.
no.
Not really difficult. He probably had someone take it for him, like he did his SATs and his term papers in college. But let's talk about the MRI thing and the health thing. That I find kind of interesting. We know that Donald Trump took an MRI, and he said, "Well, it was just part of my checkup," which he had two of. He
Yeah,
had two annual checkups in 1 year.
yeah.
Um, and then he says, they asked him, did they, what were they looking for on the MRI? He says, I don't know. I may have had an MRI for different injuries on my body, but you usually know
Oh
what they're
yeah.
checking.
Mhm.
And then they said, will you release the results? He says, yeah, we'll release the results. He doesn't release the results. He gets a report that's written by the White House using terms that medical
No.
professionals don't use. He talks
Mhm.
about how they checked his heart and they checked his stomach, and everything is all good. He's perfectly good health, which was just written by the White House, not by doctors, because they wouldn't done it that way. But here's the thing I noticed: he's 80 years old. There's some
Yeah.
question of his cognitive ability. The White House says they only checked his heart, and they checked his stomach. Why at 80? If you're in there fucking anyway, why wouldn't you check their brain? Or did they
Well,
check his brain and they just don't want to talk about that part?
I think that was it. I mean, you can see the guy's falling apart. I mean,
No.
I
Oh yeah.
expect an arm to drop off, like, with Walking Dead at any point. I mean, they put him on something, I mean, to fire him up at some point, but it doesn't last nearly as long as it used to.
No.
He starts his day much later than he used to, for
Yeah.
example, and he can't hold his attention in any sort of meeting, anytime he goes to any sort of public event. Within moments, he's, you know,
And I'll be honest with you. I'm 65 years old. If I'm driving in the car with my wife, I can fall asleep. I'm not driving, of course. I can
oh,
fall
well, that's
asleep in
good.
there. If I'm sitting watching TV, I can fall asleep. But if I'm talking or actually driving and I'm active, it's not a problem. But Donald Trump is falling asleep. It seems to be getting worse, and there's no hope for this to get better. It's going to continue to deteriorate. It's going to get worse. It's going to get more embarrassing for him.
Absolutely. And does anyone really believe he's at the helm? Does anyone
No,
really believe that he has some sort of agenda or plan for what he wants to do other than put money in his own pocket, which I don't understand? I mean, here's a guy, okay, he failed at everything. He was deeply in debt. He owes a lot of money for various legal judgments against him. All of this, but at the same time, he still has a lot of money. So at best, he's got a couple of years left. At best, and
yeah.
yet that's all he's concerned with is money, money, money.
Well, and he's a perfect example of what the problem is with the oligarchs in this country. He's nearly 80 years old. He's on death's door. He's not healthy. And the only thing he can do is think about is make more money. How much money do you fucking need if you're going to be dead in a year?
Mm.
And that's like these oligarchs. I got profits of $20 billion, but that's not enough. I need more. This is like
Yeah,
an addiction for these fucks.
it is.
It's a way of keeping score. The more money I have, the better I am than you. And that's a fucking sickness that we've got to put a stop to.
Absolutely. And we talk about a minimum wage. We never talk about a maximum wage. And
Yeah.
morally speaking, that a maximum wage is something we should look at. And I don't mean it in the sense of a wage, but we think we got it right. Roosevelt started it, and I guess Eisenhower didn't interfere with it. That's the best we can say. We had high tax rates. That it was a carrot and a stick. Okay, we're going to take all of this money unless you invest it in something that does something good. So they invested it in things that did something good, and it was the most prosperous time for the most people in America ever between 1948 and 73, roughly, because that's what we did. We taxed the shit out of rich people and corporations, and they were forced then to reinvest that, and they made shitloads of money. So it worked great. It worked perfectly. Then Ronald Reagan gets in office. They stopped enforcing antitrust laws with Reagan. You can look at it, you can chart it. And then they let all of these corporations just meld and meld and meld and meld unto the point where there's one or two major corporations in pretty much every, whether it's airlines or car companies or whatever it may be, meat industry is one or two dominating. So there's no competition. So you lost your free market right there. We let that happen. We got to get back. We got to bust these suckers up. I just saw BlackRock. Okay, they're buying up these single family homes for 300,000 and immediately selling them back to another division of their company for 700,000, thereby increasing the value of the home by half or doubling it. And at the same time, though, we saw this happen in Minnesota years ago. You remember when all the lake properties around the enclosed lakes,
Yeah.
corporations started buying up the homes and driving up the values so that the people who lived there then had to sell and move because they couldn't pay the taxes anymore. That's the BlackRock plan. That is the private equity plan for all of America. Okay, is to price people out of housing. And then they'll rent them back to you or something, probably, but or they'll just tear them down, rebuild them, and they'll just keep making money. Whatever it is, they need to be pushed out of that market. Private equity and everything associated with it needs to be broken up. All the corporations need to be broken up. All of the trusts, all of that. You look at Coke and Pepsi, they raise their prices the same day, the same amount. That's collusion. Okay. It should not be
Yeah.
allowed. It is illegal, quite frankly, price fixing. Very much illegal. We have places like Family Dollar, just saw this the other day. It's based here in Tennessee. Their business plan is to post prices in the store, and then when you check out, the price is higher. But unless you sit there, you don't know that. But that's their business plan,
Yeah. Well,
deceiving you.
I I think a perfect illustration of how the tax inequity is this. If you make $50,000, you pay some taxes, right?
Yeah,
If you make $100,000, you end up paying more taxes than the people paying $50,000 or
in
making
theory.
$50,000. Um, and maybe not much of a difference in percentage, but in actual dollars, you pay more. If you make $150,000, presumably you pay more taxes than somebody who's making $100,000. But if you make a certain amount of money where you're wealthy, now you pay less money. You
Yeah,
pay less percentage. You pay fewer, you may pay more dollars because of the size of what you've got, but your percentage is lower than if you made $100,000 or $150,000. How can anybody explain that other than the trickle down theory? And it's pretty clear that never worked. That's where the inequity is. If you said to people, everybody pays 15% tax, everybody, whether you make $100 or whether you make $1 billion, that would be helpful. We should have some accommodation for people that are in the poverty level, of course, just so they can survive. But if the oligarchs paid as much in taxes as you and I did, we'd
Mhm.
be fine.
Oh yeah.
We'd have plenty of money.
And this has been what the I'll say Republicans because they're the party that carries the water, but conservatives in general, this group of people, these oligarchs, these insanely rich people, ever since they started immediately after FDR died, working to reverse everything he did. And the way they had to do it, they knew, was they had to concentrate all the money into a small group of people. And that's what they've been working for right along. And it really took off with Reagan, okay?
Right.
Um, Lowering tax rates on the rich people, raising them on people like you and me, taxing our Social Security benefits, which hadn't been done before, and that sort of thing. Um, Funneling money upward, upward, always upward into the pockets of these people so that they have so much money now that it's very hard to deal with them because they can buy, I want to run in Eastern Tennessee. They can outspend me like crazy. My stuff won't be seen because it will be forced out of the way by what they can put in. And they can do all sorts of evil things along the way by buying politicians, which is what they do. And we see that, and that's the only way. We have to have another revolution like we did with FDR, where
Well,
we
and
were able to attack them financially and break up their huge fortunes.
the important thing we have to remember too is when it comes to this kind of behavior and giving wealthy people money and freedom and they can do whatever they want and they don't have to pay taxes. Naturally, we blame the Republicans because they are the biggest. Um, they're the guiltiest of doing this.
Mhm.
But we have to admit that there are Democrats in Congress, presidential Democrats, that have pushed this along too. Many of them have been just as responsible for what's going on with healthcare, with big money trickle down bullshit. It's not just the biggest problem is with the Republicans, but when the Democrats get in, we got to start cleaning some fucking house there too.
Absolutely, and I agree with you 1,000%. And it probably predated the Clinton White House, but we know that what happened there.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton and company were as deeply influenced by Goldman Sachs as any Republican ever was, right? Welfare, as we know it, was an attack on low-income Americans, and he did it to win favor with Wall Street. Okay. Um, we have people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Katie Stockton and other people who point that out constantly, right? But they are not movers and shakers within the party. The
Right.
Pelosi's and the Schumers and so forth, all of these people are to somewhat guilty of this as well. Um,
Yes.
Joe Biden, he coming from Delaware, where all the corporations live. I'm sorry, I think Joe did some really good stuff, and he went against type to do it. But we've got to destroy the corporations before they destroy us, because that's what they're trying to do. They really ultimately want a feudal society where they have these nobles and perhaps a king figure. We don't know, but at least they have um, these nobles, this small group of people, and everybody else is forced to work for what they want to pay. I mean, it hasn't been that long. The 1920s and 30s, um, we look at ICE now, right? We have this governmental group that was supposedly going around and getting rid of undocumented people forever, right? And now they've got all
Right.
these other people in there, these thugs in there. People don't remember the labor movement. How many people were killed and murdered by guys just like ICE? Only they called them detective agencies back then. The
Right.
Pinkertons and the Baldwin Felts, they were nothing but thugs that were hired by the factory owners to attack the labor, the strikers, and murder them, murder their leaders, to infiltrate unions and so forth. It's the same guys. You can always get people to brutalize the downtrodden. It's not hard. Just offer them a little money, a little more money than the downtrodden are making, and that's what they're doing with ICE. These guys are all thugs. These are people who probably didn't make $30,000 in their life per year
Right.
before ICE came along, and now they think this is sweet. And as well as I do, they don't care. They're going on a quota basis. They don't care if you're a citizen. They don't care what your nationality is. They don't care how long you've been here. They arrest you. They get paid.
Well, it's funny when you talked about the labor stuff. Uh, I remember talking to my grandfather a long time ago. He died some time
Mm.
ago. Um, but he was a blue collar guy. He worked in a brewery and he was a truck driver. And he was telling me stories, and I was too young to really understand what it really meant. But he was a truck driver in that whole labor situation. And he used to tell me how brutal it was. I mean, these fuckers would come with clubs, start pounding
Yeah,
on people, beating the hell out of them. It was an ugly situation.
yeah.
And and the thing about it is we aren't any farther away from that now than we were then.
No,
That's
we see
basically
it.
what's happening now.
That's exactly what's happening now. And remember when the Hormel strike, we were working at the radio station. Hormel goes on strike. What does the Republican governor do? He sends in the National Guard to as
Yeah.
peacekeeping, keep it apart. But when that happens, that means the union loses because they lose all their leverage, right? But look up Ludlow Massacre. Look up the Battle of Blair Mountain. Look up Matewan. You'll see that the United States government militias and detective agencies and um, American troops were all involved in suppressing the labor movement. It wasn't until Roosevelt got in and said, "Hey, everybody has the right to form a union," that the labor movement took off. Before that, it was brutal, and many people were murdered by the forces of oppression. That's all I'll call them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We need to make some changes and we got to get on the Democrats to get behind this. Once they are in power, we've got some people say, well, when Donald Trump's out of power, Republicans out of power, what are you going to do? I'm going to start getting on Democrats like the
Mm-hmm.
Pelosi's and say,
Yeah,
when are you going to start working for the fucking people? You need to work for the
exactly.
fucking people because they aren't working for the people. I want to talk about this whole Pete Hegseth thing. This is a obviously a big story, and
Yeah.
you have a military background, so I'd like to get your perspective of this. So the big story is that they're bombing boats in the Caribbean. They blow up one boat. There's two survivors. They're clinging to wood, and they do what they call a double tap, and they say, the report is that Hegseth says kill them all. Now that's kind of changed, but they did go back and did this double tap to two members of the boat that were alive and killed them. As I understand it, under the military code of conduct, there's an exact example of this very thing that says you
There is,
don't
yes.
fucking do this.
No, this is it. You have to rescue survivors if you can. Um, I will say this. It says that. In actual practice, is it done? Probably not. Hegseth refused to the fog of war, but what he was using it in the sense of, there's a lot of shit happening, and who knows, right? Really, what it comes down to is they're fogging us. They're saying,
Yeah.
there are rules of combat. Everybody violates them. Anybody who followed Israel and Hamas, or really any war, us in Iraq, or any of that, we were bombing civilians just as much as any despot ever did when we went shock and awe in Iraq. Okay, we were killing thousands of civilians, the same that Netanyahu and his cronies were doing to not to necessarily Hamas. They were out of the way, but to the people of Gaza, that was genocide, certainly, murder. It's happening in Ukraine right now with Russia. They're not hitting military targets, they're hitting apartment buildings and so forth. Um, when you talk about rules of war, that's a fiction. You know, it's saying, well, we're going to be nice about it, but they never do. I mean, you put the rules down, but you violate them all the time. We violated them in Vietnam, any conflict we've ever been in, we've done it. But the rules are there, and you're supposed to, as a fighting man, evaluate the order you're given. But let's say My Lai, okay? The Lieutenant Calley tells his men to shoot these civilians. They do it. They shouldn't have. They should have said, no, that's an illegal order. Would somebody have shot them? Probably. It happens. Friendly fire, fragging. You never really know. I'm a little cynical about this because I know that in actual combat, people know that they can probably get away with it. Okay. It's rare that somebody is called up. And in the rare cases where somebody was called up, called on the carpet for it, Trump pardoned them. So, what good is that?
When I look at that whole Lieutenant Kelly thing, I was young when that happened, but that was big news. And
Mhm.
now with this situation with Pete Hegseth, I almost think of it like the concept we had when we were teenagers going out causing trouble and stuff. And the concept was it's all legal unless you get caught.
Yeah.
Now the problem with this situation, not only did they get caught, it's worldwide news. And I was wondering about something that happened yesterday, day before, when Donald Trump was, first of all, before this was all happening and they started bombing the boats and they were proud of it. One of the spokespeople, I can't remember who it wasn't Levitt, it was somebody else who came out and said, maybe it was Levitt, came out and said that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth were directly involved in all attacks on those boats. That's what they
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Then when this happens and it becomes a bad news situation, Donald Trump says, well, I didn't know anything about it. And then Pete Hegseth says, well, I knew no, he said it was a hoax. It never happened. And then, of
Mhm.
course, when it was proved it happened, he says,
Mhm.
well, I was there. I only saw the first one. I left before the second one happened. But the Admiral Bradley, is fully authorized to do what he decides to do. So he basically pawned it off to
Sure.
Admiral Bradley. So Congress says we want to talk to Admiral Bradley. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe we have somebody with some integrity who understands the code of conduct, who will tell the truth. But he gets in there and he says, oh, Pete Hegseth never said kill them all. Now, I can't trust him because I can't trust anything the Trump organization does. And now I don't trust this admiral. And then he says, Pete Hegseth didn't give the order. I just did it. And I'm thinking to myself, you mean to tell me, as these people are going off the cliff, Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, they can still get to you? There is no way that Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump weren't involved in each one of these strikes. Just for their own ego's sake, they're going to be
Absolutely.
involved. And now this admiral is sticking to the story that supposedly gives Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth some cover for this situation. I was appalled that this admiral did that. And I'm thinking to myself, regardless of who you say was at fault or who gave the order, the fact is it broke the law, it broke international law, it broke our laws. Um, Admiral, they need to take, when the time comes, not now because he's got full coverage. Um, Somebody needs to go after this fuck and at the very least destroy his legacy for being complicit with Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. I mean, even if
Well,
he took the order from Hegseth, he still did it. He's still complicit.
yeah, I'm sure they either offered him well, you'll be in the Joint Chiefs if you go along with this. Or they threatened him, well, we'll take away your pension and you'll have nothing, and because you can't prove we did or we didn't, so we need you to take the hit on this one. We'll make it up to you, whatever they did. Just to elaborate a little bit about Vietnam and Calley. Okay, Calley was the one who got caught, as you say. We had testimony from rank and file soldiers to Congress after Vietnam, during Vietnam, that they were told, the way we are measuring victory is in body counts. So we need
Right.
those body counts. Get them however you do. And that they killed civilians fairly routinely because they saw the civilian population as the enemy, even though it was the incursion of the North Vietnamese that we were supposedly fighting against, and their friends, the Viet Cong, who were South Vietnamese, supposedly on the side of North Vietnam. But the fact of the matter is, most of the soldiers who were there probably, when you are in it, you're going to follow orders. They tell you to shoot, you shoot. You attack a village, you don't know who's in there. Turns out it's women and children. Well, that's too bad, but we didn't quote know that. But now let's do the body count and get the fuck out of here. I do not blame the soldiers in that situation because they were between a rock and a hard place here. Okay,
Yeah.
but their leaders knew. There was actually a film called The Fog of War based on the defense secretary at the time, who basically recanted and sought absolution later after Vietnam by talking about how they you know essentially did very immoral things during Vietnam. Look that up.
Well, I think
McNamara, Secretary McNamara.
right. You talk about body counts.
Mm.
That's no different now than what Donald Trump's doing with immigration
No,
deportation.
same
He's not
thing.
killing all of them, but it is about body counts. I think what people have to understand is, as far back as Vietnam and beyond, we are fed the information that everybody else in the world is bad, but we're the good guys.
Yeah.
When you look at some of the things we've done, including now, we're not the fucking good guys. Never
Mm-mm.
were the good guys. It's been propaganda shoved down our throats, and these fucking people are just as egregious, corrupt, and violent as any other fucking leadership in any other country. Are we any better than Benjamin Netanyahu? I don't know.
No, we're not. We did the same thing with Iraq that he did with,
Right.
well, maybe not as sustained, maybe not as leave no brick on top of another brick exactly, but I still remember shock and awe and watching those bombs fall on Baghdad. And as many civilians were getting killed as there were military, probably more. When Saddam's army was retreating from during the first Gulf War, when his army was retreating from Kuwait, they continued to bomb them, even though they were retreating mercilessly. And that to me was almost a war crime. Um, but at any rate, we are not, when it comes, I hate to say it, but we have not a leg to stand on and say we're the good guys. No, we don't. We say we go for our self-interest, whatever that may be, depending on which party's in power. But by and large, right now, this Venezuelan thing that he's drumming up is just another exercise in, I think, trying to get the oil that Venezuela has and whatever else they might get from them. They see them as weak and vulnerable, and Trump wants to have himself a nice war victory here.
He does. I was talking to Old Soul yesterday, and she was in Japan and the UK. And I said, with what's going on down in the international waters, down in South America and Venezuela and all this stuff, how do people perceive the United States or Donald Trump and the administration? And she said, well, they don't even really call it war crimes. They just say he's a murderous dictator.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, she's fucking right. That's
yeah,
exactly what he is. And that's
Exactly.
America.
Yeah, that's what we have become. We have no, at this point at least, we in theory have the framework to change power. Do we actually? I'm still not convinced Trump won the last election.
Yeah, I question it too. I question because Donald Trump who he says he is, I question the election. I question the assassination attempt. I question the murder of Charlie Kirk. I question the attack on the National Guard. I don't
Yeah.
know if any of the because you know what, we don't hear anything about it. We don't know shit about the guy who shot Donald Trump or what was going on there. That's weird. We know more about JFK than we know about Donald Trump's situation in Butler, Pennsylvania.
Exactly. I mean, it's like they just erased the kid who shot at him, you know?
And same with the kid who shot Charlie Kirk. I mean,
Yeah.
there
What
are
have
so
you
many
heard?
weird things about there's so many weird things about Charlie Kirk's situation and now his freakish wife who's taking control. It just I've talked about this before and people get on me about conspiracy theories. And I don't have a theory. I just have questions. Charlie Kirk was nobody until they realized he could talk a bit and pull a crowd. So then a billionaire gives him money. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, he's risen to a certain level and everybody loves him. I'm convinced that they maybe looked at Charlie Kirk as kind of um, uh, an heir to Donald Trump because he had a similar personality. He was young and he could stick around for a long time. But then he starts talking shit about Israel and now he's dead. Okay.
Yeah.
Prior
Well,
to being
go ahead.
prior to being dead, he marries this. He's not, he's a pretty average looking guy, but now he's got some power. He marries this woman who's a pageant queen.
Who
Well, we
has
find out
ties to Donald Trump, by the way.
ties to Donald Trump, and people will say that's crazy. Well, it's a fucking fact. She went to Romania supposedly to work in a program for children. Then children started disappearing. Now, she was never convicted of anything, but Romania said, get the fuck out of here. They obviously had some suspicions that she was involved. She comes back. She marries Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk ends up. You could make all kinds of conspiracy theories about this, but this is fucking weird. This,
Yeah.
there's so many questions that have to be answered and never will be. And it's Donald Trump, so you gotta assume anything's possible.
Yeah, and there's so many other people who have influences. There's Elon Musk, who's still around, if lower key, and you have
Yeah.
Peter Thiel, who is ascendant here, who runs the company that's going to keep track of everybody. That's what his company basically is doing, is it's steal.
Palantir, yeah.
Yeah, that's what their thing is, to be able to basically keep track of everybody and know everything about every individual so you can target them and so forth. You have all of these people in the background. You have Musk saying Japanese people should stay in Japan and so forth. Well, fucking South Africans should stay in fucking South Africa. Okay, that's him and Peter Thiel. I mean, these guys are Nazis I mean, they were born into Nazism. They think empathy is a weakness. They think that they have to protect their money, they have to convince people that there's an antichrist, that they have to raise up some figure to defeat. There's all of these weird QAnonish kind of conspiracy things going around, and the Christian nationalists like Johnson in there, and I don't understand these people at all. I mean, they exemplify nothing that has anything that is Christ-like or has anything to do with anything in the New Testament. And basically, they will lie, they will cheat, kill, whatever needs to be done to advance the cause of the religion. This is pure insanity. It needs to be wiped off the face of the earth.
Well, these Republicans today have pretty much destroyed the Republican Party. It bears no resemblance to what the Republican Party once was. Whether you liked them or not, It's not what we're looking at today. But in addition to that, these evangelicals and these hard right religious folks, they pretty much destroyed Christianity too. Because as you
That's
say, they are talking about things that are just the opposite of what the Bible says, and they said, no, it's not. This is the way it should be. They have pretty much tainted and destroyed the organized religion. Because if I have a church someplace and I'm sticking to the Bible and I'm a good person and doing the things according to Jesus or the Bible, you're being made to look horrible because the loud religious people are just hypocrites. They're doing the opposite. Anybody who has an organized religion right now and is normal and decent should be pissed off at this point because they're ruining Christianity much like they have the Republican Party.
exactly. And when the Republican Party or people, individuals within it say charity is not the work of government, it's the work of the church. So they're saying anything, any programs that we've put into the government, SNAP and so forth, should be done away with and just let the churches handle it. Well, it's way too much, okay? And to me, there shouldn't be any such thing as charity. There shouldn't be a need for it. If we order society in a way that there are not automatically losers, you don't need charity. All right. I mean, if you give everybody for example, which it will come to this, it will have to, a universal basic income.
Yeah.
You can do better than that, but you can eat and have shelter. That's what everybody needs. We can do that. All we have to do is tax the rich. That's it.
Well, that's the one thing they always say, well, how can we pay for it? And I said, well, how come you never ask how we pay for a $2
Yeah.
trillion tax cut or a $1 trillion defense fund that we don't need?
Yeah.
No one ever asks how we can do that. And the simple answer is, like you say, just tax the rich a fair amount, not an egregious amount,
No.
not an excessive amount, just a normal amount like we get taxed, and that would change everything. But they refuse to try to do that. And because, like I've always said, they don't want a lot of money, they want all the fucking money.
Yeah.
And that shit's got to stop because ultimately it'll be the demise of the country. They keep taking from the middle class. Unfortunately, the middle class is what keeps us afloat. When they
Yeah.
destroy the middle class, they've got nobody to steal from anymore, and nobody's buying anything, and everybody's in poverty. Then the country goes to shit.
Well, I don't know if you noticed that we did get an actual job report yesterday or the day before that showed that the layoffs are way up and hiring is way down, and just as we said, right? Even though the official government reports aren't being put out because they're so bad, Trump just won't let them be issued, right? So Elon and his like are saying, well, we're going to use robots for everything that's blue collar, and we're going to use AI for everything that's white collar. So we don't need workers anymore.
Who's going to
Beyond a
buy your shit?
certain, yeah. They see this is not this is the fly in the ointment, right? I think they think, well, we'll sell it to other countries or something like that, but that never works. Okay, yeah. If we have everybody here, if we had everybody here on if we had universal health care and a universal basic income, our economy would be through the roof
Yeah.
because people, especially poor people, buy shit. They spend money, they don't hoard it. Their money doesn't work for them because they have to spend it too quickly.
Right.
This is the difference between the really wealthy and the average guys like you and me too. We pay taxes on our income. Rich people don't because they get capital gains and that kind of stuff, or they take out these huge low interest loans against their wealth, so they never pay taxes at all.
Right. Right. Exactly. I mean, that's the one thing they do. People say, how do they not pay personal income taxes? They got all this money in investments and whatever. They take a loan. There is no taxes paid on loans, and that's how they get around it. They shouldn't be able to do that. I mean, it's another loophole that wealthy people can use, and we can't. Maybe you and I could do it. No, we can't do it because we don't have that excessive money sitting in some investment. We have to work and we have to pay income. So that in itself isn't fair. It's a loophole for them to get around it. And that loophole was created by other rich people because they knew exactly what the fuck they were doing.
And then hedge funds and private equity have carried interest, which basically is the same thing. They make money without paying taxes. So, which is why they need to be destroyed, broken up, gotten rid of. No more of either. No more private equity. No more hedge funds. Get rid of
What
BlackRock. Blow it
this
up.
thing with this thing with Pete Hegseth and the double tap and all this stuff, this has really got whipped up in the news as of late. Where do you think this goes? I mean, the DOJ isn't going to do anything. Donald Trump could theoretically pardon him, but I don't know why he'd have to pardon him because the DOJ is not going to go after this general or Pete Hegseth. Um, this is just yet another mess that Donald Trump has to deal with. And I'm thankful for the mess because he's at the point now where he can't manage everything. And this is the demise of a narcissist when everything falls on top of him. But what do you think happens with this Pete Hegseth thing? It's big news now. Does it go anywhere or do we just forget about it and focus on something else?
I think it goes away. I think it goes away. Eventually, the Epstein files, something has to be done. But these are sideshows. I mean, I think they're valuable. They need to pursue because they need to be pursued because a shitload of young women were horribly abused and taken advantage of, and that needs to be punished. So we need to follow those files wherever they go and indict and take to court and put in jail anybody associated with it. I want that to keep going. I want the investigation against Pete Hegseth and all of this to keep going. But the thing is, the economy is what's making the difference. That is what people are seeing. They go to the grocery store, they see the bill, and they say, okay, this ain't working. They're
Yeah.
telling me that I'm doing well, but I'm not. I don't have any money left at the end of the month. As a matter of fact, I'm maxing out my credit cards just to fucking live.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Donald Trump keeps coming out and saying prices are going down. My polls are
Nope.
going up. None of that is
Nope.
true. I mean, you can
No.
tell people that prices are going down, but we live the life. We pay the bills. Nobody's that stupid.
No. I drove from Tennessee to Minnesota and back again, and there was no $2 gas anywhere. I never
No.
saw the cheapest gas that I paid was before I left home because I got a 45-cent discount on my grocery card. So I paid it right at $2, a little less than $2, but with that, okay. Everywhere else along the way, especially near Chicago and any other major place, it was 350. You
Yeah.
know,
It's 320, 330 here. Yeah, it's nowhere near $2. And it's I don't remember who said it, but maybe it was Carville who said it, uh, or maybe it doesn't matter. Uh, it's the economy, stupid.
yeah,
And
it was
that's
horrible.
and that's the bottom line. And the economy has no hopes of getting better between now and 26 or even 28 at this point. He's throwing us so deeply in a hole. The economy is going to get worse and worse and worse.
Right, and he keeps talking about this $18 trillion he took in. Well, where the fuck is it? The deficit has not been reduced. They haven't paid down the deficit. It's still there. Fact of the matter is, the Treasury Department says we're going to bring in about 5.2 trillion all revenues. Okay, that's what they're projecting. So we're not getting this $18 trillion. It's ephemeral. It doesn't exist. Okay, you're not going to get a check for $2,000 because there's no money to do it. This is still
Yeah.
being worked out. Okay, they put the tariff in place. Somebody wants to import something. The company pays the import duty. It takes a while then for them to actually, to pass it on to the consumer and so forth. But we're not taking in the kind of money they're talking about. I think The best estimate, something like 7 or 8 trillion.
I've heard it's decidedly it's not even a trillion, but
Yeah.
who knows? Now, I don't know if you heard Costco is
Yes.
suing the
Suing.
Trump administration for these tariffs. It'll be interesting to see if that what that stirs up. If because Costco's a big company, they have a lot of money. They're not friends of Donald Trump, and it's costing them money and costing their customers money. This lawsuit hopefully will open some eyes for some people.
And there are some others as well. I mean, I'm not even sure it's ever been firmly established that the president has the ability to set a tariff.
Well, we're waiting for the Supreme Court to decide on that. And after this gerrymandering thing, I don't necessarily have high hopes for the Supreme Court not allowing him to do whatever the fuck he wants.
No, and I will say this again. I've said it before. Anytime there is a 6-3 decision in the Supreme Court, it's political. It's not supposed to be that way. And the reason is you've got these hacks in there, these they call themselves originalists, which is a bogus theory that has no place in any sort of legal theory. This idea that you can only go by what the founders wrote down at that moment in time, which is insane because so much that we deal with now didn't even exist in those times. Okay, I mean, there's a big difference between a damn musket and an AR-15, right? So the
Right.
Second Amendment, if it were written today, but would be written differently.
One question I
Um,
would like to ask one of these originalists: if you're a firm believer in originally the original document, why then do we have amendments?
yeah,
Why have amendments if we're sticking to the letter of the law? These amendments that they tout, like the Second Amendment, they
hmm
tout that, but
the
they're
first.
originalists.
hmm
Which original do you want? Only those that that appeal to your fucking agenda? That's what it seems like. I mean, it's a hypocrisy. It's a fucking joke. Originalist. The whole
Yeah,
point of the Constitution was that it was somewhat pliable so that you could change it as times changed. They foresaw that, and that's what's happened. So to be an originalist means, as far as I'm concerned, you're a fucking narrow-minded dumbass.
and one of the biggest originalists on the court is a man who wouldn't even be able to vote if we were going with the original document. I'm talking Clarence Thomas,
Right,
right?
right,
You know,
exactly. Do you think the Epstein files have a deadline of December 19th? We're now less than 2 weeks away from that. What do you think is going to happen when we get closer to it? How are they
hmm,
going to fuck this up?
that I'm not sure. I hadn't thought about it.
Well, if Pam Bondi's involved, Donald Trump's involved, Cash Patel's involved, there's going to be some fucking messiness in this shit. They're going to try to do something to delay or whatever, or they're not going to release all of it, or it's going to be heavily redacted. I personally think that they will fuck around with it somehow, that the 19th will get pushed back or whatever. But I think at that point, you're going to start seeing people who are normal people in the DOJ, the rank and file, or the FBI, or even in the administration. We're going to start seeing things leak out. I mean, a lot of members of Congress have seen a lot of these files.
Yes.
It's not that they don't know what's in these files. They fucking know. Donald Trump knows. Pam Bondi knows. It was just revealed that initially, when it was decided not to put out the Epstein files, that decision was made by Donald Trump and Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
So what's that tell you? Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you want them released if you were talking about releasing them before? Pam Bondi says they're on my desk. Donald Trump says yes, let's release the files, and then all of a sudden they don't want to. The only presumption you can have is they're fucking hiding something, a cover up.
Well, this is so obvious. I don't know why when some of these people appear on TV, that's not the only question. If these files clear Donald Trump, why would he not release them?
Yeah.
Obviously, they do not clear him. They implicate him very seriously, and that's why he doesn't want. That's obvious. I mean, there can be no difference on that. If you had in your hands information that would clear you of all speculation about how much you were involved and you won't release it, no, that doesn't pass any sort of smell test anywhere, and that's with everything, by the way,
Yeah.
that he's ever been asked about. If you are refusing to release, whether it's your taxes or whatever it is, if it would clear you, then you would release them. That's just simple logic.
Well, when I was talking to Old Soul about this and other folks I've talked about it, the idea of old men being intimate with young girls, underage girls. The impression I get from Trumplafucks is that if Donald Trump or anybody else was messing around with a 15-year-old girl, that's not a big deal to them. It's not a big deal to them. Megyn Kelly made that point. You know, well, you have to understand that Jeffrey Epstein was interested in 15-year-old girls, not 8-year-old girls. Like that's fucking different.
Yeah.
A kid is a kid, and it was ridiculous to say that. But Old Soul has heard some things, and it wouldn't surprise me at all that the big thing that they're most concerned about, that it's not just young girls,
No.
that it would be young boys too, and that's
Oh.
that's the thing they're fearful of.
Yeah, and I don't understand that, but it seems to be kind of universal that a certain type of person, and I use the term advisedly, um, goes that way. And I don't understand it. I mean, it boggles my mind to a certain extent that it's that widespread. This pedophilia universal, so to speak. Megyn Kelly, my God, some lady needs to take her aside and explain to her um, in no uncertain terms. I'm trying to say this so I don't get, um, but anyway, she really needs to be instructed by some of her own. Just let me put it that way.
You can say it any
Uh,
way you want. We've got friendly people here, and Megyn Kelly is a piece of shit.
yeah.
I don't know what she believes. She has kids, um, but she's doing um, whatever she's doing for one reason, to make money. I mean, Dan Bongino, prior to knowing about the DC bomber, we were talking about that earlier. He said it was an inside job. Um, that that it was an inside job and somebody hated Trump. And now I understand that Bongino maybe admitted, well, I said those things, for views and to make money. I don't know if that's true. I got to look into it further. Um, but
Well, Jason Lewis, and this is specific to Minnesotans. We had a right-wing radio host, Jason
yeah,
Lewis, who for years held forth, with all of the most ridiculous right-wing bullshit that you possibly come up with. That actually to the right of Rush Limbaugh a little bit, but then he ran for Congress and was elected and so forth. And as he was running, he said, I was paid to be outrageous. So I said outrageous things and he won, you know? Well, it shouldn't work that way. You should be dealing in truth or you should not. Well,
well,
I will say this. I try to deal in truth, whether it's Republican or Democrat or whoever it may be. And I know you do too, Mike. And like you say, when the time comes when the Republicans are no longer in power, we'll be holding Democratic feet to the fire.
well, I often had arguments with people. They liked Rush Limbaugh, or they liked Howard Stern, or they liked any of these people on the radio, and I had to explain to them, regardless of who you listen to, knowing what I know about radio, what you hear from them, that's not them. That's not real. That's a
Mhm.
fucking show. There was a talk show host, very weird guy that I produced for a while when I was at a radio station. I think his name was Allard. Was it
Mhm.
Bob Allard? Bob Allard.
Yeah.
He was a fucking weirdo. Um, And I'll explain to you why I was a weirdo. But I remember sitting in a meeting in the 70s, probably, and he's got his producer and him, and I'm sitting there because I'm going to be running the board and stuff. And he says, "So what do we want to talk about today?" And the idea of talking about abortion came up.
Yeah.
He said, "Okay, we'll talk about abortion." He says, "Which side should we take? Which one?
Yeah.
Which one is going to work the best for us?" They don't fucking care. They're
Mm-mm.
just making a buck. Now, Bob Allard, if that's his name, Bob or Bill, there's two of them. One was
Yeah.
normal, one was weird. Um, this guy was in his 60s, probably 50s,
Yeah.
60s. At breaks, he'd go out and smoke pot in the 70s in the back alley.
Yeah.
But he ended up uh, attempting to kill himself. You know how he did it?
I've forgotten.
Well, he was unsuccessful one way and successful another way. The first time, he stabbed himself in the stomach with a fucking fork.
I
That's
remember
how he was
that.
going to kill
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
Stabbed himself in the stomach with a fork. And then when he actually did kill himself, he went into the garage in his car and let it run, like a lot of
Yeah.
people will do. Interesting thing about that is that he recorded the whole thing. He's a radio guy. So he's in
Yeah.
the car. He's got the recorder running while he's in the process of dying. And I remember his producer came up to me. He goes, "You want to hear the tape?" I go, "No, I don't want to fucking hear the tape. Why would I want to hear that fucking tape?"
Yeah.
But this is my point. Who you hear on the radio or see on TV is not who they really are, and they're probably worse than they appear in the media.
Yeah, and this is obvious. I mean, to those of us who see them on a daily basis or used to different ones, and um, they are there to outrage selves. So they're going to drum up, and this is whichever side you're on. Um, when I do something on TikTok, for example, if I do like I do a number of different things. Some of them are nostalgia. If I do a nostalgia one about Christmas, it does pretty well. If I do one that is a hit piece on Trump, it does twice as well.
Yeah,
So,
oh, of course.
it's outrage drives regardless, and I try to strike a balance. I try to point out things that I know to be true. Sometimes they're outrageous, sometimes they're not. But at the same, and I draw conclusions based on stuff that happened in my life because I've been around for a long damn time, and I can remember things from the '50s that are happening now that I thought were rotten in the '50s, and they're rotten still. Okay, I'm going to point those out, but I try my very best, and I know you do too, to find the truth and talk about that, not to just
Right.
push whatever we think might hurt Trump. It has to be true, or we don't do it.
Absolutely. When I started TikTok, I thought, how am I going to get the most views? How am I going to get the most followers? And then I realized I don't know. So I'm just going to do what I do and let caution, throw caution to the wind, let the chips fall where they may. But I've often said, people want to talk to me about the time I spent in radio and the people I met in radio. I said, most people I ever met in radio, I don't like. They are phonies, they are egotistical, or they are emotionally broken. Maybe that's why you and I got to be friendly because you and me, I can't think of too many other people that were fucking normal in that business,
No, no,
including people we worked with.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's true, and anything that's tied to entertainment or where your ego is part of it, you're going to find a bunch of people who have a real problem, okay, who aren't grounded, who live for the click, who live
Yeah,
for the rating, who live for that. They will go whatever and do whatever. We saw that with Howard Stern, who's actually a
yeah,
fairly intelligent person, who went so far and then kind of broke, and now he's back doing something a little bit better. So I give him props for maybe seeing that what he was doing. Very few others do because they're rewarded for bad behavior, essentially.
absolutely. It's nice to see Howard Stern finally mature at 72 years old. So fuck, you know. we're getting toward the end here, and I just wanted to bring this last thing up because it is absolutely terrifying what could possibly be. By the end of this month, there has to be some decision made on the ACA subsidies. I think most Republicans want to continue the subsidies because of the disaster that would befall us, especially in red states. But Donald Trump is pushing them not to do it. There's got to be some answer before the end of the month. I suspect whatever answer comes, it'll come at the last minute of the last day, like it always does with continuing resolutions and such. But what do you think is going to happen between now and the end of the month with the ACA subsidies? Do you think they'll extend them, or do you think they'll just say fuck it, we don't care?
Kind of depends. The Senate will vote to extend.
Right.
I feel fairly certain on that. Mitch McConnell and three or four others will go along with it because they are less beholden to Trump, let's say. The
Right.
House, I don't see it passing there
Do you think they
unless,
would vote against extending the ACA, Republicans, even though they know it's going to devastate their own state and will probably affect their fucking election? Do you think they're so complicit with Donald Trump, they'll go against common sense and vote against it?
yeah, I do. I just saw what is the Republican senator from Iowa, I think it is, not Grassley, who's 95 and running for reelection.
Joni
Um,
Ernst? Joni Ernst?
oh wait, no, it wasn't. It was maybe it was one of the where's Thune? Um,
I don't. Well, Thune is the Senate leader. I'm not
no,
sure where he's
no,
from,
no,
but
no, he's Democrat. I can't remember who it is was now, but it was a Republican, and they were saying, the farmers need to be bailed out. What's going to happen? And he was saying, "Oh yeah, we got to bail out the farmers," but really, he was trying to say that it'll all turn around at some point. So maybe they need to bail them out right now or whatever. But that's not happening at
no,
this
it's not
point.
happening.
So yeah, I do think that some of them, uh, if they can get, I don't see a lot of working for their state in any of the representatives in Congress. I see them beholden to Donald Trump and they will do whatever he says, or because they know that he will come after them if they don't. So it's self interest versus the people of their state. They want to get as much money as they can and then get the hell out of there. That's what I'm thinking mostly. So he is dead set against it. So I'm thinking that um, they may just not vote for them, or they may make it such a limited thing that it'll extend it for 3 months or something. So maybe they can get out of the way. I don't know.
Yeah. I think ultimately they will extend it because it would just be too damaging, too devastating, and it's going to fuck these people up. Maybe they don't care. That's the last thing I'll ask you about. Now, with this election in Tennessee, the election on those elections on Tuesday, it's pretty clear the Republicans are going to get drubbed in 2026. Um, and there's been word that a lot of people might be resigning from the Republican Party
Yeah.
and maybe not waiting till the election, doing it beforehand. Do you think that's viable?
And I think they'll do it. That is very possible. That rather than being, it is so difficult to know because I do think Trump is so damaged that he has no conscious idea of what to do. So it's really the people behind him, maybe that can influence him one way or another. The I just know that people who get their insurance through the ACA will not be able to have insurance.
Yeah.
And I think nursing homes will close and hospitals will close. And it will be devastating. And maybe that will turn it around even more. I hate that people have to go through that kind of pain, um, but that
That's
may
what I
be
was
where
gonna
we're headed.
that's what I was gonna ask you. Much like we had the depression and everything went so badly for so many people that we went way left when FDR came in. Do you see that as a possibility if we have this disaster with the ACA and they don't fund it, and it's horrible, and it's devastating for a lot of people. Does that put us in a better position in 2028 to actually look at universal health or Medicare for all because of the devastation it caused?
It would, but I think the thing that has to come first is that we have to reestablish the labor unions. We have to have government action say, Amazon, you have to organize. You have to let them organize. You have to allow the unions in. And this is in everything. I don't care if it's Tesla or whatever the fuck it is. You got to have unions and they got to be strong. That's what drove the recovery from the Depression. That's what we need again. We need a counterpoint to the strength of the money that the oligarchs can spend.
Yeah.
And that comes from unionization and union dues that give them a war chest to fight with. Okay. We've seen it. We know how it works. So we've got to get to work on the unions, and we have a chance. I think we really have a very good chance if there are elections that we will sweep. Anybody who's up for election will probably the Democrat will probably win.
Yeah. Especially as things get worse. All right, Eddie, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Thanks for joining us. Glad we could connect this time. We'll try to not have those holes in our schedules, but fucking life happens.
Stuff happens.
Last week I was going to do it, and then I had my 5-year-old granddaughter running around all over the fucking place, and that wasn't going to work. We had to take her to some trampoline park. And what am I going to say? No, honey, you can't go to the trampoline park. I've got a rule of thumb with my granddaughter. Now my grandson, no isn't a word I can use with any of them. Nope, we're doing whatever the fuck they want.
No is for parents, not grandparents.
Exactly. I told my daughter-in-law. I said, I respect everything you do as a mother. I would never question how you raise your daughter or your son or daughter. I said, however, I'm not going to bother you how to raise your kids. Just don't get involved with how I raise my grandchildren, because I'm going to do what the fuck I want to do. I don't care. I don't fucking care. All right, Eddie, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know you got shit to do, and I don't know if I have shit to do, but I'll be getting my marching orders sometime very shortly, and then I'll know.
All right. Take care, dude.
You too. Those of you listening, thanks for taking the time to do that. Hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.